Hi guys, Aaron here from Heaps Local. Today we are talking everything mushies. We're going to go see Adam from Westside Mushies, see how he's growing these mushrooms. That's some of the best in South Australia. He's serving up to our top restaurants. So doing some amazing things and we're going to check that out. Then we're going to head into Kaipo Forest and go foraging for our own pine mushrooms. Saffron Milk Caps is their other name. We're going to do a little bit of education around what mushrooms you can and can't pick. We're then going to go home and cook some beautiful dishes. I'm going to give you a really classic pasta dish, and then we're going to play around with something a bit more fancy. But for now, let's head off and see Adam. Adam,
hey brother,
welcome to Heaps Local. Thanks for being a part of the show. Tell us, how did you go from being a security guard to mushrooms?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. My dad was pretty surprised because he could never get me in the garden as a youngster. Hate gardening, never could get me cutting the lawn, so I like to be growing things and tending to things was a bit of a shock for everyone. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like with Corona, like COVID and stuff. Work got stood down. I was actually doing some other odd jobs in between, but I don't know. I was on YouTube one night actually. I just went down this crazy wormhole of like I don't even know what I started up on, but you know how like you can go from one thing to the other to the other to the other, and I ended up on mushrooms. I don't know. I don't know. I just remember seeing these dudes like growing mushrooms in, I think it was in Ireland or somewhere. And they like had like little shipping containers, and they were like in these like super urban areas, and I just remember thinking it was like really cool because I had never heard of it, and I just thought it was sick like that they were doing it in like urban areas, like providing such sick food. And the mushrooms looked crazy, like they had all these stop motion things like where like they look like aliens, like coral, like, and I was just, I think they freaked me out first, and then I was like, yeah, I'm into it.
The YouTube algorithm for the win.
Yeah, and then I saw they were making like a little bit of money. I don't think they were doing it like big scale, but like at the time, like that was when Corona stuff, like COVID stuff first started. We didn't know how long we were going to be working for, so I thought, give it a crack as a hobby, and then like if it turns into like a paid hobby or like, you know, something. And then yeah, ended up ordered 3 textbooks that night. I went straight on this website and ordered 3 textbooks, and then ordered a grow at home kit, and then like I don't know, it just went nuts from there. Like yeah, I signed up to some business course within 2 weeks. Before I'd harvested my first mushroom, I was signed up for like a course that meant I was doing it as a business.
Amazing.
Bizarre. I had no idea.
So what's the process, I guess, for growing mushrooms?
Yeah, there's lots of different processes, and like there's probably a couple of different phases, and you can start at different phases. So like you can start right from the beginning if you like know everything about mushrooms. You can collect spores and grow mushrooms from there. I'm not that tricky. I don't know how to do that. So like, I buy what's called liquid culture from a supplier in Melbourne, and then from there, if you've got a sterile environment, so like I've got a makeshift sort of, I guess you call it a lab, where you can do work where you can introduce those cultures onto grain, like it's all sterilised process onto grain, and expand it onto like a hardwood, they call it substrate, so like sawdust with some sort of supplement. So there's like the lab work, then there's like an incubation phase, there's a fruiting phase, there's lots of different little phases, and like sometimes it sounds really simple when you read it, but then when you do it, like you realise like every week they find a new way to do you over, like something else goes wrong that you didn't know about. But I don't know, they're pretty cool. Like I don't know, like there's a lot of things that I like about it, but then there's like a lot of things that pop up every week where you're like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. Yeah, very probably the main ones, yeah.
And who are you most proud that you're, I guess, supplying to at the moment?
Oh, I can't answer that because then if I don't say someone, I'll get stitched up. Who am I most proud of though? Like I see the people that do things that I would never have imagined that you could do with them. So like We had Alex Payne from Topiary the other night. He actually came over and like visited us, which was really cool. Like, you know, like customers like doing shed feeds, like coming in and meeting all my mates that I grew up with. So Topiary and Kane Pollard, like they've probably been my biggest supporters from the beginning. Kane was my first, what I call like a chef, where like when I googled him before I met him, I actually freaked out because I dropped off a few samples to people, but like I haven't grown up in hospitality. I'm not a chef. I didn't know anything about it, and then I got this call from him. I thought, oh yeah, who's he? Like had a little look, and like, he just won like I don't know, it's like gourmet traveller, young talent of the year, and he's like just been headhunted by Soul, and I'm like, oh dude, like I'm growing mushrooms in my spare room. It was pretty crazy.
No, it sounds great. Thank you so much for your time today, mate. I'm very excited to cook up some of these mushrooms, make some amazing dishes, share them with the public, and yeah, looking forward to chatting more. Cheers.
Sick. Cheers, brother.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Cheers. That's good. That's going well, man. I think that's awesome. Hi guys, we are here in the Kaipo Forest today, first hunt of the mushroom season, and we're looking for saffron milk caps, also known as pine mushrooms. They're bright orange, but always remember, if you are not confident in identifying mushrooms, please don't eat them. They are very dangerous. We're gonna head off for a hunt now. Let's go. Guys, I want to show you something really important. So while these are the most beautiful little mushrooms and they look like the little ones you see in fairy gardens, these are extremely poisonous and you should not touch them. If you cut them with your knife, you're likely to have a bit of poison residue on your knife and you can infect your whole batch. So please leave these ones alone. Take pictures because they're beautiful, but leave them alone. You don't want to see them in your basket. Okay guys, this is what we're looking for here. Hidden under this little bit of grass, beautiful saffron milk cap. So we'll just very gently clean it away. And then you can see this bright orange flesh. Need to be super gentle when we do this. You don't want to disrupt it too much. They bruise really easily. So this is exactly what we're looking for here. Been out into the forest, we've got our lovely saffron milk caps and we're going to cook up a beautiful dish today. We've got Adam's absolutely stunning oyster mushrooms from Westside Mushies. He's been lovely enough to give us some of those. And we're going to start with two dishes. We're going to do a mushroom pasta and we're going to do a very creative mushroom special dish. You'll see that one play out. So we're going to start with the pasta today, and I've got some pre-made pasta dough that I've done before. I'll have the recipe on the website for this one, but we'll roll out some pasta because we don't want to be doing that once these mushrooms are cooked. We want to be able to get the pasta into the water straight away. A little bit of a tip I learned from the beautiful Laura, who has given a masterclass on MasterChef itself. Using semolina, it will not actually take away the moisture from your pasta dough. So you won't keep getting a drier pasta dough while you're working with it, but it won't stick together. So thank you, Laura, for the hot tip. We're just going to cut it in half to start with. Don't need a whole thing. Rolling pin, pop this bit off to the side for the time being. We're just going to roll it out a little bit, just so it gets through the pasta machine a bit easier. Okay, pasta all ready to go. I'm gonna pop some pasta water on first because you really need to make sure that water is a rolling boil. And then we're gonna chop up these mushrooms that we foraged yesterday. So you need to make sure you salt your water. The pasta has no salt in it itself, so you want quite a bit of salt into this to really make sure that you're seasoning your pasta. It also helps with the flavor of the pasta water if you're using it in your sauce, which we'll put a little bit in there today. So we're gonna move on to these mushies. These have already been cleaned. You need to make sure you scrub your pine mushrooms to make sure that you're not leaving any of the forest in your food. While we chop the mushrooms, we're gonna start rendering down our bacon. I've got some absolutely stunning Barossa Valley maple smoked bacon. I'm gonna pop this in the pan and start letting that cook away. The oil that comes out of this, the oil and fat that comes out of this bacon is gonna really help flavor these mushies. So we'll get that on now. So as you can see, the color of this mushroom is amazing. They are bright, bright orange, and they're just so full of flavor. They're such a meaty, beautiful mushroom. Okay, so we've got those lovely pine mushrooms, rough chop on our oyster mushrooms. Thanks again, Adam, for these. Westside mushies are some of the best mushies we have in this state. And as you can see from our mushy video with Adam, he is doing amazing things from his property. Okay, bacon's cooking away nicely. You can see we've got plenty of fat in that pan. That's gonna start flavoring our mushies. Just before we pop the mushies in, we're gonna go in with a diced shallot. Got shallot ready to go. For when you're doing this pasta, hot tip, have everything prepped. If you're trying to cut and prep, and things will happen very quickly, so having it pre-done makes life a lot easier. I've got a nice big pan here. And this will serve probably 2 to 3 people, at least. This is quite a dry pasta we're going for today. We will use a little bit of the pasta water and a little bit of white wine will go in. But we're not looking for a really thick sauce. This is very much a drier pasta, just with lots of flavor. Next to go into the pan, we've got some fermented garlic. My little tip, microplane. Very quick way of getting your garlic minced into it. Don't have to chop it, less messy. So we're just gonna put, this is fermented garlic, homemade fermented garlic, and we're just gonna quickly pop, I reckon we'll put 3, we'll have a look, have a taste, we might put the 4th clove in. I mean, can you really have too much garlic? Next thing we're going in with, a little bit of thyme. I'm just literally gonna break off the tops. We don't want any stalks in there, if we can help it. The top bits are nice and young. We'll just grab off a few more leaves. Yeah. Last thing we're going to pop in, a little bit of kale. I know it's healthy. We've got some Tuscan kale here, or Calvanero. I'm just going to take a few leaves out of this bunch. Oop. And we will shred them, pop them in. Alright, so we'll give the kale a rough chop. Again, this is a very rustic dish, so we don't need anything too precise. In it goes, a little bit of salt, and some cracked black pepper. We're going to pop our pasta in now. We've got a nice rolling boil on that water. We're just going to get a splash of white wine. Okay, and I'm also just going to put a knob of butter. About that big. Just adds to that lux. Just break it into a couple pieces. And then we'll let that melt and stir through. Pasta is ready to go. Doesn't need any more seasoning. Turn your heat down a bit now. You don't want to actually overcook the pasta when we toss it through. But all we're going to do is straight transfer into our pan. And we'll just grab this little bowl, grab a little bit of our pasta water. There we go. We'll just stir this pasta through the mushrooms gently. We've got a little bit of Parmesan cheese here. We'll just put half of this through the pasta now. We'll stir it through, and we'll put the last little bit on top. Very happy with this. Grab our bowl. Finish this with a little bit of olive oil. So drizzle over the top. And a little bit more of this Parmesan. Just a little sprinkle. And there you have it, my pine mushroom and kale fettuccine. Hey guys, so we've done our pasta dish, and now I'm going to do something a little bit more fancy, a little bit more master chefy. This dish really represents my feeling for, you know, the pine mushrooms in the forest, and it's a visual representation of a pine mushroom growing. So a lot of the elements are quite time consuming. The recipe will be on the website for everything broken down to the letter. But today we're just going to do a plate up. I'll talk through some of the elements while we do it, but essentially we'll just be putting the dish together. So firstly we're going to grab these mushrooms that we cooked over some charcoal outside. These have just been lightly marinated in some oil, some garlic, a little bit of thyme, salt and pepper, and then just cooked over coals. So they've got a beautiful smoky flavour to them. We've also got a goat's curd whipped mousse. We've got a very textural and very interesting soil. This soil is actually made with very dark chocolate, so 95% dark chocolate, black olives, we've got some pistachios, some toasted pine nuts, we've got some pepperberry, and then we've got some truffle oil to bring it all together. There's a lot going on in here, but it's a very interesting flavour. We've obviously got our mushrooms, and then we've got, this is my little secret, you can do it with either gnocchis or ginger, but this is just deep fried, very thinly sliced ginger that I've just dusted with a little bit of wattle seed and a little bit of pepperberry and salt. It gives a really great flavour, but it looks exactly like the pine needles in the forest. And then to finish it all off, I've got a beautiful tarragon oil. So this will just give that greenery that the forest has, a beautiful sort of grassy flavour that tarragon has. It's a beautiful flavour. So we're going to plate this one up now. I don't have a piping bag, so if you ever need to pipe something, don't have a piping bag, just a Ziploc bag will do the job. You just push it into the corner and then cut a little bit off. Make sure you get rid of that so it doesn't end up in your food. So we're going to start with piping a nice blow of this into the center of the plate. We're going to build around it. Okay. We may need a little bit more of that after, but we'll see how we go. We're just going to create a well. So for the moment, I'm going to put a bit of our tarragon oil in. You sort of stumble across this as you're going along. Then we're going to start plating our mushrooms. So these are some of the beautiful oyster mushrooms from Adam. These are just going to go over the top of that oil. Don't worry if they're overhanging on the plate a little bit. That little bit of texture is perfectly fine. We're not looking to hide the beautiful mushroom itself. Then we're going to go on with a few slices of the pine mushrooms. Again, these have just been roasted over the fire. And don't stress, the oil's already broken out. It's just a starting point for it. So that should be enough there. And now we've got our soil. So we want my hands. So this is our beautiful soil. It's got a lot of depth, a lot of flavor. We're just going to sprinkle this over the top of this part of the plate. Just trying to mimic that forest floor. And we've kept one of our mushrooms roasted. We've kept it whole, and that's going to go on top, front and center, just how these mushrooms look in the wild. And really mimic that forest. It should be enough dirt. We might put a little bit more on top. So we've got this beautiful whole mushroom here, and it's just been cooked to perfection over those coals. Just gonna sit him in place as if he was popping out the ground. We've got a little bit more dirt just to cover that. Actually in the forest. And then we grab our pine needles. We're just going to lay these around very loosely, just like it was popping through the soil. And out for us to find. So this is my very fancy version of roasted pine mushroom with a chocolate and olive soil, a whipped goat's curd, and a tarragon oil. Enjoy, guys. To get this whole recipe, jump onto our website at heapslocal.com.au or like and subscribe our YouTube channel. Thanks, guys. That was sick.